So here I have a question, and I know that you guys enjoyed this last time. So I have a question, a warm-up question for you that we can kind of, talk in small groups about this question. It's comparing these two passages regarding the followers of Yeshua and what the similarities and differences are. I kind of put a couple of questions up here for you so you can kind of think about these things. And I'll give you just like 5 minutes to look at the passages and talk about them for a minute, and then we'll kind of share ideas.
Did you turn on the mic?
What?
Did you turn on the recording?
I did.
Okay, just check.
So this is about the followers of Yeshua in Matthew chapter 4, verses 18 through 22, and Matthew chapter 8, verses 19 through 22. And in regards to these two different groups of followers, think about these questions. Who are they? Where are they from? How do they respond to Yeshua? In what ways are they similar? In what ways are they different? So I'll give you, if you want to break up naturally into a group of a couple of people to take a look at these, we'll get back together in, say, 5 or 6 minutes. Does that sound good? So I wanted to ask, I'll just ask some people at random, what do you find about who, when I say who are they, how would you compare these two groups of people? John? What's the difference between these two groups of people that are talking with Yeshua?
Well, I think that the first group was, he selected them. There are two brothers, two sets of brothers, and then of course also the later set of brother, they have to leave their father. That's a very important one. But the second set, I don't know if they come from the initial group of John the Baptist, but they select him. They want to him to be the teacher.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Their rabbi.
Yeah, that's
It
a
seems
good
like there's kind of salt of the earth fishermen who are laborious in doing, and then there's a scribe, just blue collar, white collar.
Yeah. Do you get that impression that there's like blue collar, white collar thing going on here?
I don't
Yes.
think,
The blue collar
so.
is which, the higher or the lower?
Blue collar is manual.
Blue
labor.
collar
White collar
is the-
And fishermen were
the fishermen.
low
Blue
blue
collar.
collar.
Yeah. Jerry?
Remember the story you told maybe a month ago about why did that first group follow him so quickly?
Yes.
And it was because he was probably the most famous rabbi in Israel at that
Sure.
time. These were school dropouts.
Right.
They said, "Man, we can just learn at his feet."
Yeah.
And but that might have had something to do with their quick response, because
Yeah.
most people just don't jump up and say, "Yeah, I'm going to quit my job and I'll go
Right.
wherever you say."
Do you think that there's any kind of an age difference between these two groups?
There should be scribe.
A scribe and
I don't know what was undiscipled.
Well, in Matthew 8, one of them is called a teacher of the Torah or a scribe of the Torah, and the other one just says one of his taught ones, one of his disciples. But I got the impression from the scribe, obviously, that this is an older person.
Right.
He's
So-
burying his father, too.
Right.
Yeah.
To me, it says his father died.
Well, that's the
probably
disciple
one day.
who's
Maybe
burying
Yeah,
his
that's-
father's working with
So
him,
age might have something to do with it as well. Do you find that they respond differently to Yeshua?
Yes.
How do they respond differently?
Some
Yeah.
follow and some come.
I don't know. My view of this is informed by a scripture that says that you did not choose me, I chose you, and that before Jesus picked his apostles, he prayed the whole night.
Yeah.
And I think the scene of the 4 was when he picked his disciples. That became his apostles.
Sure.
Now these two volunteered. They just followed Jesus. They were not called.
Right.
So I don't know. Somehow I think that makes a difference too.
Sure.
And because God was helping Jesus pick, there must be something also that influenced those two
Yeah.
to just drop
So,
everything.
so what do you think about this first guy in chapter 8 who says to Yeshua, "Master, I will follow you wherever you go"? He seems to definitely be volunteering himself, which is fine. And what is Yeshua's response to him?
Very, very odd, but I think
Very odd.
because I think yes, very odd because he
What,
seems to have
what,
a
do you, what do you
zeal.
make of his response?
He immediately put him down because I think he can read that this scribe does not know what he's
Will not
asking. He
follow
might be
me.
rash.
No.
He might be rash because he immediately says,
Count the cost.
birds and birds have nests and foxes. Well, I don't. And then there was no answer.
Yeah,
There was
tell
no
him to count the
follow up.
cost.
What he said. And most
Yeah.
likely he just turned away, just like the rich man.
It's certainly possible, Derek.
I was just going to expound, just thinking about, saying that he's a scribe, I can imagine as a scribe,
Well,
probably
paid,
more cleanly.
more-
And the things that he described is why you don't want to follow me. It's like,
I ain't got no place to
No place to sleep.
sleep.
yeah, it's like, you can imagine a scribe.
This isn't
his
gonna be
job,
easy.
He, guys
Secure
cup of coffee
job.
in the morning next to him. And
Sure, sure.
And
So-
their names are also not mentioned in the second group. The first group, their names are clearly stated.
Yes.
Right
We
to
see them
Absolutely.
many times. Here
Right.
they are this.
Right.
scribe and the
So now, what about this second
Yeah.
person in the second passage here that says, Yeshua actually says, "Follow me." But what does he say?
Have to bury
He
my
said he
dad.
would love to, but he's got to go home and take care of the family.
gotta bury
business,
my
put
dad.
the head in the ground and get his inheritance, and then he'll follow him.
Making excuses.
Yes. So now, what do you understand about this? I gotta bury my dad. What do you think that means?
I can't go now. I'll go later.
Did his father just die?
I
No,
don't think
no.
so.
No, his folks were.
He needs to take care of stuff, collect his money, and
And then,
no,
and
seriously,
then
they
life
used to do that
first,
also.
not about the Lord first.
Yeah.
It's about,
Yeah.
I gotta take care of my needs first, then I will come and follow you. It's kind of like people today.
Yeah.
But once I, get everything right, then I will follow you. Then I'll buckle down and do.
That is so funny that you say that because I know people who are like, I'm not ready to follow Jesus. I've got
Yeah.
some things I need to do first. I have actually heard people say that. Derek?
I wonder from the idea that I'm not sure, like, as far as the pashat of what Jesus is telling the guy in that specific topic, it's like, it makes me wonder, like, where's the balance between honoring and respecting your elders and taking care of them, as the Torah seems to imply, versus
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I
letting
think
go.
that maybe we want to talk a little bit about what exactly is going on here. And I have heard a couple of different interpretations regarding this passage. And one is that this guy's dad is old and is possibly going to die soon. So he's like, I need to take care of this first. My dad is sick and is probably going to die soon. And I'll need to take care of him for a little
Why
while
is he
before he
there?
dies. What is the word on the street?
How's it going?
Fabulous seeing you, buddy. So that's one possibility.
chair right
Find a chair anywhere you like, man.
So why was he with him? If he still has to care of his dad.
Well, okay, so that's one opportunity, is that maybe this guy is talking about, my father is old and is likely to die soon, and I am needed with the family to make sure that things get done with the burial. It is also possible that his father had just died and had been entombed. You guys familiar with these burial processes? How someone dies and they wash the body and they anoint it with oil and they wrap it in cloth and they stick it in a hole in the wall for a year, and they let the skin and the flesh rot off of the bones, and then they take the bones and they put it in an ossuary and then they bury that after 1 year, the anniversary. Okay, and so some people think that in this passage in Matthew 8, this guy is saying, my dad is in the tomb and it is coming time for me to go and do the ceremony to break the seal and take out his bones and put them in an ossuary and bury them in our family plot. Does that make any difference to the story, do you think?
Is this
No.
a pagan?
Not really.
Is it pagans?
No, it's a Jewish
thing?
burial ritual.
Jewish, okay.
So it doesn't really matter one way or the other, does it? And
Yeah.
so what do you interpret Yeshua's meaning to be when he says, let the dead bury their own dead? What's he talking about? Is he, that is a rather enigmatic statement. Tammy?
Oh, sorry.
No, that's not.
You've been volunteered.
Told.
Voluntold.
Wait, you have to say it again, sorry.
Sorry, Mike told.
What he just said, what was the question?
Oh, the question is, what do you think Yeshua meant when he said, let the dead bury their own dead?
Oh, I don't remember what I said. I said that, that was a self-canceling statement, and that same thing that he was just saying. Is that what I said? I don't remember.
No,
what I said.
the spiritually.
Is
Oh,
he talking about dead
spiritually
people?
dead.
Okay, so you're saying let the
Spiritually
spiritually
dead.
dead
Yeah.
handle the dead?
Care for themselves and and bury themselves.
Mm.
And
Right.
some tasks can be done by unbelievers as well as believers. It's not a choice of bad versus good, but it's good versus better. That's what I wrote.
Good versus better. I like
Only
the
if
way you put that.
if he sees any significance in than just a physical body, you know. Okay, if you're dead, you're dead, and also maybe that's why he says those other interesting things about foxes have holes, you know. Those things have no meaning here.
Mhm.
Well, just let it be, and but if you follow me, then you live a spiritual life, and it's the only thing that matters.
Right. Yeah, that much is definitely clear that he's like, look, following me and doing my will, which is the Father's will, is more important than anything.
Right.
The clothing, the food, the shelter, burying the dead, everything
Yeah.
is subservient to your serving your master.
Yeah.
And these two people in Matthew 8, as compared to the disciples that were called in Matthew 4, we got a big difference here.
Right.
These people seem a little bit reluctant. They're not
Right.
quite ready to do what is required of a true Talmudim, a true follower. Then I think that's the challenge for us. Are we ready, willing, and able to do what is it that we're supposed to be doing, which is following the master at all costs? Whether that means, how would that affect you? I mean, what consequences might befall you as a result of following the master, regardless of the consequences? What consequences might you have to face in today's world? Grace?
In our business, a lot of business, because our business requires like shows on Sabbath,
Mm.
and we have vowed no, we don't do. So
Yeah, that can
it's
be.
all right. God will take care of us.
That can be a requirement, absolutely.
Relationships, I think it's a huge one, especially if you have people in your family that don't believe. That's a huge
Yeah.
one.
Yeah, that can
Looked
be.
upon as an oddball.
Yes, you're likely, if you could become a holy roller or a Jesus freak, your family might kick you to the curb a little bit.
Like,
That's true. Grace?
You also need to be, there's a balance there, because unless it is talking, like you said, which makes sense about the dead burying their dead being someone who's already dead and just needs all the
Burial services.
burial service and
Yeah.
stuff. But at the same time, we're told in the Torah to take care of the widows and all that.
And we certainly have a
we're
responsibility to our
responsibility
parents.
parents.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there were people, while Jesus was on earth, he told them that, the Pharisees or whoever he was talking to, that you say, oh, I've given that money to God so you can't have it. And that was wrong.
Absolutely.
So there is a certain responsibility that we have to weigh. It's like, it was always, in my growing up, it was always pulled back and forth because Daddy was gone
Mhm.
on meetings a lot.
Mhm.
And so Mom was left with mostly raising us kids.
Mhm.
And there were a lot of times when we wanted Dad to be involved in stuff with us. And he had meetings to go to. And I always wondered, or if you're on the mission field and the mission and the people who are your ministry make such demands on you, where is that balance between being the father in that case to your children who need, you know what I mean?
I think that is
They're your
precisely
first
what
mission
Paul
field in
is
mind.
talking about in Corinthians when he says, I would that people were like I am, unmarried in the ministry, because
Makes it easy.
then your interests are divided. If you're I would that your whole heart would be devoted to that.
But if you're a pastor or
You
in
have
a
children.
ministry that involves counseling and
Mhm.
stuff, it really is good to have a wife by your side.
Oh yes, absolutely. And I think
so,
that's
you know,
probably
there's a balance of where does the Lord want me?
yeah,
where
and
does
that's
the
probably
Lord
where
want
the
us?
Catholics got their idea of having celibate priests. is from a
Yeah, but they
misunderstanding
had
of
the
Paul's
nuns
teaching.
who were also.
They also had their own nuns.
They
But
still
you know,
had
well,
their-
so let me ask you this: Do you think?
Some for the nun boys.
Do you think that this passage is in Matthew 8:19 through 22 is talking about a certain level of commitment that is above and beyond what would normally be required of a righteous individual who is a worshiper of God? Because they're talking about following the Messiah. Could we attach some slightly higher significance to that? I mean, is more going to be required of them than just following God? And therefore, the statements that he's making?
There's
Yeah,
that
oh, yeah.
different.
Right.
What?
Forgoing their lives.
How is following Messiah different from following God?
Well, that's the
Well,
question
because
I'm
I
asking.
didn't
You
hear-
tell me.
I
Is
didn't
it?
hear
I
what
mean,
Physically gonna follow
she
them
said,
around.
"Is following God different than following the
Are
Messiah?"
you using follower as a metaphor, or you're
No,
using
I'm taking
follower
it
as
quite
a
literally
Physical.
because
that
being
it's
a
sandals,
worshiper of
washing.
God and doing what is right in the vocation that you have been called to, and being a righteous plumber, for example, and a righteous husband is different than being a Talmudim of the Messiah. You're following this guy everywhere he goes. You are forsaking father and mother and families and children, and you are gone. Do you think that there's a higher level of commitment there?
Of course.
And that is potentially why this conflict is occurring.
Now you left
Of course
everything.
there is, but
I mean, I'm interpreting that as that's another level. You're going to leave everything and follow. I mean, the disciples in Matthew 4 left their father, left their businesses, and they followed the Messiah. I think that's a little bit different of a level than just saying, I'm going to worship God
What
and
is-
be a righteous person.
what is being spoken to, though, the sophistication of these two groups, though, because a scribe is definitely different than a fisherman. The fisherman drops everything that goes. The scribe is
Right. And so what I am suggesting, and I'm not saying I'm right, I'm suggesting it as a possibility to you that the people in Matthew chapter 4 are going to be his Talmudim, his taught ones, his followers. They're going to follow in the dust of the rabbi. They're going to follow him wherever he goes. They're going to die for the cause. These people are hinting at, we want to follow you, but their
Slow
level of
us.
commitment is not that great, and he is basically in a kind of gentle way saying, that's not for you. That's not for you. This is a higher level thing that you would have to give away everything and follow me. Like he said to the rich young ruler, go sell everything you got and follow me. That's the level of commitment that it takes to follow the Messiah as a disciple. Now that's not us though. I mean, the Messiah is not present with us, and we're not being asked to give up everything and follow him as he travels around the world. We are to give up certain practices and you know, evil things that we shouldn't be doing. But I think that there is a clear level of distinction here with these people in Matthew 8 saying, we want to follow you. This is really exciting and kind of cool. And he's like, well, the program that I'm operating on here and the people who really are going to follow me, that's a whole nother level. And he's being gentle with them and saying, you know what? I got no place to lay my head. Foxes have holes and birds have nests. I got no place to lay my head. This is a little bit more than you're willing to do, and I know that because I can see your heart.
Well, I had, maybe also, it's kind of like when someone is called into a certain ministry, so you have a pastor, you know, they are called to that, but not everybody in the congregation is
Going to
there
have to make that kind of commitment.
Right,
Yeah.
and he has to make a commitment. It's a different, I would say it's a different kind of commitment than we would have to make as the sheep,
Yeah,
and he
sure.
is, you know, like a leader.
Everybody has to make some type of commitment.
Right,
But for a
but there's
disciple
different-
or a prophet is a little bit different than a layperson who's
He's
just
more-
trying to do what's right.
Right,
You
he's
know.
called to that ministry.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the way I see it. Is,
Okay.
You know, you have ministers, and then you have, you know, people that want to follow. Like
right.
I figure, you know, I follow,
Right.
but I'm not the minister up
Sure.
there teaching
Sure.
everybody.
Yeah.
So,
And I think the people in Matthew 4, they want to be mini Jesuses.
yeah.
And
yeah.
the people in Matthew 8 are like, this is some interesting stuff. Sign me up. He's like, you don't know what you're signing up for.
Yeah.
You mean like American Christianity?
Sounds good to me, buddy. That's a good way to look at it. Yeah. So, do you have any additional questions or comments regarding this section before we move forward a little bit? Okay.
I have a
Yes.
quick question. Don't go too deep into it, but
You telling me not to go too deep into it?
I know it's hard. The disciples that were chosen in what was it in the first chapters of John.
Yeah.
Matthew talks about it. Mark talks about it as well. What is the sequence? Are we first? Does he first pick the apostles up from John at the Jordan River? And he does the 40 days, of course, the temptation, and then goes to Galilee and picks up those 4 brothers, or is it first the 4 brothers, and then the rest, so to say? Because
Good
there's
question.
a discrepancy.
Good
and
question.
It's not really clear.
Yeah, and you know what? I think that my understanding of the sequence of events there is that we're dealing with, in the book of John, with those disciples, that is Philip and Andrew, who are followers of Yochanan, the baptizer,
Yeah.
and they are out in the wilderness of Judea involved in this ministry of John the Baptist, and
First
then
3
John
chapters.
says, hey, check it out, the Lamb of God, and they
Yeah.
follow him. But then he goes to the Galilee, and that's where he meets John and
Exactly.
the sons of Zebedee.
Yeah.
So that's my understanding of the sequence of events. And
Because
it
a
was-
lot of people say the opposite, that the first goes to Galilee and then.
Well, he was from the
40
Galilee,
days.
but
Exactly,
when he
yeah.
came down to the land of Judea and got involved with John's ministry is when he picked up. As far as who came first, did he choose the people in Galilee first
Yeah.
and then go down to Judea and pick up Simon and Philip? That's a good question, which I couldn't answer off the top of my head. I'd have to look at it a little bit more carefully. What do you got, Angela?
Well, in the chronological gospels, he puts those 4 books in order, so about right there you might see
I'll share the whispers.
the order of it.
Yeah, because
Okay.
there's also something.
So right here it gets into, he's
All
been
right.
baptized, he goes into the wilderness,
Yeah,
it gives the sequence.
because Matthew, I believe, no, in John it says also, for that was before John the
Was
Baptist
thrown into
was
prison.
exactly thrown
Right,
in prison.
right.
So,
Okay.
it's-
Well, maybe you take a look at that, and
Yeah.
if what you see, you let us know in a little bit, and I'm going to move forward here just a little bit.
thanks.
We're looking at Matthew chapter 8, verses 14 through 22. 8:14 through 22 says, Now when Yeshua entered Peter's house, he saw his mother-in-law laying down sick with a fever, and he touched her hand, and the fever left her. Then she got up and began to serve them. When it was evening, many demon-possessed people were brought to him. He drove out the spirits with a word and healed all who were sick. In this way, what was spoken by Isaiah the prophet was fulfilled when he said, He took our weaknesses and carried our diseases. Now when Yeshua saw a large crowd around him, he gave orders to go to the other side of the lake. When an expert in the Torah came to him and said, Teacher, I will follow you wherever you go, Yeshua said to him, Foxes have dens and birds in the sky have nests, but the Son of Man has no place to lay his head. Another of the disciples said to him, Master, let me first go and bury my father. But Yeshua said to him, Follow me and let the dead bury their own dead. So we've already covered a nice little chunk of this, but I had a couple of additional questions. What observations would you make, if any, regarding this episode where Yeshua is dealing with Peter's mother-in-law? You know that we've done, last week we discovered that these are the first 3 miracles that are noted by Matthew. We've got, what was the first one?
The leper,
The leper, the cleansing of the leper,
who's a Jew,
who was a Jew, and then
who he touches,
who he touches and makes clean, and then who was next?
The soldier,
The centurion.
not the centurion, but his
Son.
His servant. He healed the servant of the centurion. And now we have, what?
who was a Gentile that he healed from
From
without being
afar, he
He
was
was
not
controlled.
present physically. And now we have another Jewish woman who is healed. Now, what do you note about this that is slightly different from those other stories of healings that take place?
I guess this time there was no mention about him or her being believing or belief of faith.
She doesn't seem to be involved at all.
Yeah.
She's just kind of laying there,
And then
feeling
he's
like
healed.
crap, and he comes up and touches her, and bingo, she's healed.
Refreshments right after that.
And then she jumps up and starts serving people.
Yeah, right.
What do you notice
And
about
then
that?
healings for all.
And then healings for everybody. Now, we already talked a little bit about the sequence of these healings. That first he heals a Jewish leper, then he heals a Gentile from afar who is not actually asking for himself, but for his servant. And now he's healing a Jewish woman who didn't ask for healing at all, and then healings for everybody. And we talked about how that was likely a prophetic picture of the ministry of the Messiah, as he deals with the Jews first, and then the Gentiles, and then back to the Jews, and then healings for everybody. It was like a picture of the kingdom.
Huh.
Now, we've got this woman. What does it remind? Who does this woman remind you of that gets healed and suddenly jumps up and starts serving people? Who else was a servant who was jumping up and serving people?
Tabitha.
Martha.
Martha and Mary.
Martha
One of
and
them.
Mary. Absolutely. Now, they didn't get healed, but who did?
Lazarus.
Lazarus was raised from the dead. And
Yeah.
Yeshua said to Martha, what was Martha complaining about?
That Mary wasn't helping her, leaving all the souls.
Ain't got no help.
Doing
Ain't
his
got no
job.
help. Now, what's interesting is that this kind of reminds me of that scene somehow, but this woman says nothing. She's not complaining. She didn't ask for healing. He just touches her and heals her, and all of a sudden she jumps up and starts serving. What if any significance would you ascribe to the fact that she doesn't ask, she is healed, and immediately jumps up and starts serving?
Because he heals who he wants, I guess.
Yeah. Maybe that was her nature, just a servant's heart.
Maybe she was that glad
Asking
and
her for
appreciating and thankful and praising.
She doesn't ask for herself.
Now, if this is a prophetic shadow picture of the extended ministry of Yeshua, going to a Jew first and healing a leper and cleansing his uncleanness, and then going to a Gentile, healing from afar, and then going back to a Jewish woman, what might this signify in a prophetic sense?
That could be at the end of Zechariah where he talks about just before he comes back, they see where the spear hit him in the side and the millennium starts. When Israel accepts Christ as the Messiah.
Yeah.
It could indicate
It could be a little bit of a foreshadowing picture of, the Jews coming to understand that Yeshua is their Messiah. And I mean, you guys know, I'm sure, you've heard this, that there are more Jewish Christians now than there ever have been in the history of the world. And that there's also reported to be among the Orthodox of Israel and in America many believers in Yeshua, but secret ones. What does that remind you of?
Persecution.
Nicodemus. That reminds me of Nicodemus. And so, but it's just interesting, and I think there is a little bit of a prophetic shadow picture there, but I'm not, capable of delving too much into it. But it might be something for you to pray about and think about more, and maybe try to gain some insight into, because I think there's something definitely buried in this passage about these people being healed and in what sequence and how they respond. I mean, quite a bit of time is spent talking about that Gentile centurion who was healed, like he's been dealing with Gentiles for 2,000 years. It's kind of interesting stuff. Now, what do you know about this? Why, when Yeshua suddenly sees a huge crowd gathering, does he prepare to leave the area of Capernaum? Why is he trying to get out of there when he sees a bunch of people coming? It seems like exactly the opposite of what you would expect.
He doesn't only want to do healing.
Yeah.
Do you think it has to do with people maybe coming for the wrong reasons,
Right.
Derek?
Yeah, I'm about to say
Right.
that because the very says and when he was going,
Right.
that the other guy came, the scribe came. He's like, "Hey, let me join the party." He's like, "Ah, man, you don't understand." But
Yeah.
I was just thinking, I as far as one plausible understanding, I just kind of go back to different, sermons or whatever from pastors I hear about sticking to your calling. Jesus was always constantly. He could have been, set up shop and have a healing ministry, but that's not what he was here for.
Yeah.
But
Good point.
so it's kind of making sure he stays in the path.
Then
If he needs to get away from people to do that, then he'll have to get away from people to do that at certain points in time.
Well, it's interesting too that if you, and we're going to get to this in just a second, but you notice that he is not down in Judea where all of the the more orthodox are. He's up in Capernaum where those hillbilly type of Jews live. And now,
Trucks.
yeah, and now he's getting ready to leave them. Where's he going?
Across the river. I mean, across the pond.
He's going across the pond to the area of the Gadarenes. He's going to a Gentile region again. It's very interesting. And let's find out what happens when he actually gets there.
His job is he wants people to follow him too. That's why I think he goes, he performs. Now it's time to go, and I want you to follow me. The only way you can follow me is if I'm on my way.
True.
In my mind, I'm sitting there.
That's true. That's an
Let's
interesting.
Just hang out here.
Yeah.
You're not really gonna follow me. We're just gonna hang out.
That's an
Like,
interesting observation.
It
If
is
I want
time
you to
to go.
follow me, I actually have to lead you somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. We're not just going to hang out here and create food.
Step in the bus.
Shane?
Going along with what he says, it's going to take commitment because I'm going across this lake. If you want to follow me, then you're going to have to commit.
Absolutely.
You'd have to go around.
Yeah. Our boat isn't big enough for all of us. So let's look at the next section and we talk about the boat. I'm going to read this first part and then we're going to discuss this before we go on too much further. In Matthew 8, chapter 8, verses 23 and through 34, it says this. As he got into the boat, because it says a minute ago that he was preparing to get the boat ready and get out of here, he actually climbs into the boat, and his disciples followed him, and a great storm developed on the sea, so that the waves began to swamp the boat. But he was asleep. And so they came and woke him up, saying, Adonai, save us. We are about to die. But he said to them, why are you cowardly, you people of little faith? Then he got up and rebuked the winds and the sea, and it was dead calm. And the men were amazed and said, what sort of person is this? Even the winds and the sea obey him. Now I have one question before Angela is going to talk about a slightly different subject for just a second that ties in. His disciples, knowing the Word of God, quite possibly were considering what Bible story when this episode happened. What does this remind you of?
Jonah.
It's the story of Jonah. Only what's different?
God's in the boat.
That's a good point. So think about a couple of details from the story of Jonah. Jonah's a prophet. Yeshua's a prophet. Jonah is doing what? What's his mission? Where's he going?
He's running away from God.
He's running away from his responsibilities
To a Gentile.
to a Gentile region to warn them, the city of Nineveh, and their boat is about to sink, and they throw his butt overboard.
Yeah.
So that we got a very different outcome here. And now you got Yeshua, who is also going to a region of the Gentiles, only he's sleeping in the bottom of the boat just like Jonah, but when they wake him up, he takes complete control and calms the sea, calms the waves. What sort of person is this? That's an excellent question. What sort of
Creator
person
of the
is this?
universe.
This is the guy who created the wind and the wave. He absolutely has power over it. And I think that they were absolutely stunned, clearly.
It's surprising if we just don't think about it. They say, Lord, save us. So they did have faith in it.
They
But it
did.
says, you of little faith.
Right.
So there must be something about us knowing that God is away. We don't feel like we're safe. We seem like he's silent or
Yeah.
seems to be far away. Then,
But
you
He
know,
seems to not be paying attention.
yeah, paying attention, but he is. I mean, he's
Absolutely,
in control. I
absolutely.
think. That's how I.
Yeah.
But he's not always gonna get up and say, go away, troubles.
He's not. No, you can't learn unless you go through some troubles, Derek.
Yeah, along that trail of thought, as far as my kind of personal revelation, I thought was he told them, maybe an hour or 30 minutes ago that we're going to go to the other side. And so for you to think now that you're going to perish and not make it to the other side, I found that to be one of his reasons to say you have little faith.
Yeah.
Because we're going to go to the other side. I said so.
Yeah. And, yeah, I like what you guys said. I mean, clearly they have faith enough to say, hey, save us.
Right.
They recognize that he has the power to save them. Did you guys note, I don't know if you've seen the Aleph Beta video regarding faith. It's like, it's a very good video, and if you haven't seen it, I suggest that you watch it with Rabbi David Foreman on Aleph Beta Academy. This thing about faith, he's talking about, in order to have true faith, the person that you're having faith in, he really needs to empathize with you. They need to have the power to actually help you, and they have to understand your situation and understand what you're going through. And if one of those three elements are missing, your faith is wobbling on an unstable platform. And that these people had a certain amount of faith. He doesn't say they have none. He says they have little. What is your interpretation of what faith is? We've talked about this before. We know that there are two different things going on in Greek thought versus Hebrew thought. Does anybody remember what those different ideas are? What is the Greek interpretation of what faith is?
See to believe.
Sorry?
Were you guys talking about see to believe?
Yeah. Exceeding to a common understanding of something. Well, what is the Hebrew understanding of faith?
Sign.
Believing, I don't know.
It has to be a sign.
It's actually doesn't have much to do with mental assent at all. It has to do with faithfulness. Faithfulness as opposed to mental assent. There's two very different concepts in the Greek versus the Hebrew understanding of what faith is. And so them being faithful as opposed to just believing, what difference would that make in this situation? Looking at it from either a Greek or a Hebrew perspective. If you look at it from a Greek perspective, he's saying, what? You don't believe big enough? You don't believe enough? From a Hebrew perspective, you're not showing faithfulness. Faithfulness to what? Getting to the other side. Believing what I'm telling you. We're going to the other side.
So that video that you talked about, we'll get into that kind of thing.
It does. It
Because
talks.
I missed that.
Rabbi who?
Rabbi David
I
Foreman.
missed that meeting here when you talked about it. Maybe it was before we started.
No, I don't know. Some people in the little congregation here are definitely watched Rabbi David Foreman when he talks about the Parshas, because he's got tremendous insight into the scriptures, and it's kind of funny. Even my children, they watch the Aleph Bet Academy videos from this rabbi, and they're like, this guy doesn't believe in Yeshua the Messiah, but he's teaching about Yeshua the Messiah. Everything he's saying is about Yeshua. You're saying he doesn't believe that Yeshua is the Messiah? That's what I'm telling you. I don't know why. All of his teachings are full of Jesus. He just doesn't know who it is. It's kind of interesting. But that particular video is really good, talking about what faith is. And I think that would be an excellent thing to look at in regards to this. Now, I want to ask Angela to talk for just a minute about her idea about the boat
It's
thing.
gonna take longer than a minute.
No, you go, girl.
Okay, but
You
look,
go, girl.
Angie,
Tell
look.
us what you got.
I got pictures. 'Cause
I got pictures.
That's how I am. That's how I roll.
So tell me what you got here.
Object
Go
lesson.
sit down. Go sit down.
The cat's looking for the fish.
The
in
cat
the
wants to
water.
know what's going on.
Oh, I'm gonna put some there.
It wants to look at it. It wants to
Decided.
fish.
All right. Found this really cool thing about boats, and I was listening to someone talk about Matthew, and then I noticed some things. And you're making me nervous.
He
I'm
wants
getting
to
you
see.
in the microphone.
Oh, thank you. Okay.
I have a purpose. I'm not just standing here.
Can you just turn around and face the wall?
Yeah, sorry.
She'll let you know when she
All
wants
right.
you to.
I hope I can explain this and do it justice, because I really thought that it was neat. And just for a moment, you know the 4 levels of what's
Well, Derek was just talking about it. The
no
Pasha
of
and the Sod and the
So-
Drash.
Rosh,
Pardish.
Pez, so.
So, yeah.
Let's try to float up into one of those other levels for a moment. Just stick with me here about this idea. All right. The Hebrew word for boat is right here. It's aniyah. Okay, an aleph, a nun, a yod, and a hey. And you know the Hebrew letter hey is breath or spirit. Okay, so try to remember that. Now, if you take the hey off, you have, see the same letters? Instead of aniyah, you have ani. Okay, and this is the Hebrew, this one is the Hebrew word for boat. You take that hey off, and you have the Hebrew word for me, or I, for I. Me, not I. Okay, so for a moment, let's think of the boat as a vessel, like your body. Okay, a vessel for your spirit. Me and the spirit in our vessel. Okay, now our vessel moves. When we're in the vessel, we're not at home. We're on our way somewhere. And our vessel moves on the water. And for a moment, let's think about the water as the world or the physical. Okay, the thing you can touch. And for a moment, let's think about the boat on the water. Up here you have
The wind.
the wind. And what is wind?
Spirit.
Spirit.
So let's think about this as the spiritual. And this boat moves where the spiritual and the physical meet. It floats right there where they meet. This boat is moved by waves, what happens in the physical, wind, what happens in the spiritual, and if we're really desperate, we get out our oars and we try to move it ourselves. As a side note,
Spirituality, then you have to do it.
As a side note, the anchors on boats at this time in this region do not look like that. They look like this. They're rocks with holes. They are pierced stones. The anchor for our boat is a pierced stone. You follow me?
Smack them around the head a little bit. They'll get out.
And we are, where is our pierced stone now?
In the spiritual.
He ascended, so we are anchored in the spiritual, if we're connected to the pierced rock. Let me make sure I'm not forgetting anything here. Oh, boats are steered by,
An oar? Or a rudder. There you go.
and what does James say about that?
Watch out.
How about, oh yeah, I forgot.
The tongue.
The
Yeah,
tongue.
the tongue is like a
Our
boat.
lives are directed by, the,
The
what we
rudder,
say.
which is a tongue. Yeah.
So it's important to remember that.
What about the thunder kind of What is that?
When you have now for
I'm
the
not there yet.
we just read some verses about a storm, and there's another storm that we haven't gotten to yet, but I want to bring it up today because I want to contrast these two, and I want you to kind of get the idea of maybe another way to look at what's going on here. That we're not just getting some lines about where they were. Well, he just went down the mountain, he just went up the mountain, he got in the boat, and now they're out on the sea. I want you to think about what that could mean beyond just the literal that they're in a boat. So, hold on, where was I? Okay, remember last week when we talked about he descended the mountain? And then he did those three things that were basically, those three miracles were basically an outline for his program to restore the whole house of Israel. Okay, so descended from the mountain, code word for he came down from heaven. He got into his body, his boat, and as he got into the boat, his disciples followed him. Okay, so it's kind of a bigger. Now, a storm developed on the sea. Storm doesn't start in the water. Storm starts in the spiritual, and that wind is what stirs up the water.
Yeah.
Okay? Now, this storm, I wanted you to point out 3 things about this storm. This is after he descended from the mountain. Last week we read he descended from the mountain, he did those 3 miracles, he got in his boat, and they followed him. So he's come down from the mountain, he's gotten into his boat. Okay, he's on his way to see the Gentiles. We just talked about that. And when this storm comes up, he first rebukes them because they were afraid. So first he quiets the storm that is within them, then he quiets the storm. Okay, and then they ask, what kind of man is this? Okay, so the first time he comes down, they ask, who is this? There's a question about what kind of man is this? Now there's a second storm coming up. And in this storm, he's not in the boat. This is the one where Peter gets out and walks on the water. He's not in the boat. You know where he is?
Walking.
He's in the
It's going
spiritual.
to tell us
To the
he had
mountain.
ascended the mountain to pray. Okay? He's not in the boat because he's up on the mountain.
And he's watching them.
And there's a, yeah?
It says he's watching them from the mountain.
Okay. There's a storm, and he walks out. They do the thing. Peter's afraid. He falls into the water. And first he tells Peter, he rebukes the storm in him. Why are you afraid? And then he quiets the water and the wind. And then they don't ask, what kind of man is this? They say, certainly you are the Son of God. So the first time he comes, there's a question. Who is Jesus? Who do you say he is? The second time he comes, there will be no question.
Wow.
He certainly is the Son of God. So, and another thing I was thinking of when we were going through this was, these fishermen in the boat, what are they doing?
Looking for fish.
They're pulling fish out of.
Physical. Wow.
So just as you read and you hear these little phrases like he ascended the mountain, he got into the boat, think about what these things could be maybe I don't know, maybe I'm one of those English teachers making a huge deal out of it. But it could be that there's more there to see.
Well,
That's
It's a
an awesome
powerful
I'm
picture.
sold. I think that is.
Excellent, Auntie.
I don't think you could. Nicely done, sister. You know, yes, you could, somebody who was, feeling skeptical of heart could say, well, that's nice, but that's all a bunch of coincidence. I can't imagine that that's true.
I almost can guarantee that that picture can be found in the Hebrew words and in the concrete meanings of all of them.
I would-
you get the same
yeah.
exact picture.
And I think there's even more. I think if we were to all go back and start reading Matthew again with maybe some of this code language things, we'd start seeing, because I know there's something about patterns. We're talking about 2 storms that we've compared. We keep comparing these sets of 2. He calls his disciples in sets of 2. It's like a menorah with the one side and the other side. And I think there's a lot of that going on that we just read right over that we didn't see yet. So maybe we'll do Matthew again in a couple years. And we'll see more of these.
I know you guys do that all the time. That's always the way it is with the Word of God. You read it, and then you read it again and you see something else, and then you read it again and you see something else. It just keeps growing.
That's why
I thought
it's
even that
never
was
ending.
simple.
It is never ending. You can never know this stuff. It's a lifelong process. But I think what's interesting is that when you start picking up on these word pictures and you think to yourself just for a moment, where have we heard about boats before? Where have we heard about storms before? You just start thinking like that, and you look at the other stories, and all these connections start coming out.
And after he rebukes the storm, he says, in one version it says, there was a great silence. And I was like, there's a phrase I need to look up.
What
What's
the heck?
before and
There was
after that great
silence in heaven
silence?
for
is
half an
happening.
hour.
Oh
That's
my
what it
God.
reminds
How
me
is
of.
that fitting in?
Yeah. Go ahead.
So I'm a little slow. What is your point about the fish and that what they were doing there?
They're fishing for men. They're pulling life out of the world.
Okay.
They're elevating them
Yeah,
from
absolutely.
just purely physical into a more spiritual realm. Yeah.
And it's also interesting when he first addresses the people after he's like, I think before the apostles in Galilee, he goes actually in the boat and he says, okay, float a little bit in the sea, and then I'm addressing the whole crowd. So again, he's in the
Yes, there was
with
that
his
picture of him getting in the boat, moving the boat out into the sea a little bit, and then doing his teaching was like he gets into your boat, he separates you a little from the crowd, and then the teaching occurs.
Oh wow.
Amazing insights. Absolutely amazing. Does anybody have any questions on that? That was very nicely done. Thank you.
Yeah.
Very
Good analogy.
Very good stuff. So I'm going to continue reading on in 8:28, and it says, when they actually got to where they were going on the other side, to the region of the Gadarenes, 2 demon-possessed men came from the tombs to meet him. They were extremely violent, so that no one was able to pass by that way. They cried out, "Son of Elohim, leave us alone. Have you come here to torment us before the time?" A large herd of pigs was feeding some distance from them. Then the demons begged him, "If you drive us out, send us into the herd of pigs." And he said, "Go." So they came out and went into the pigs, and the herd rushed down the steep slope into the lake and drowned in the water. The herdsmen ran off, went into the town, and told everything that had happened to the demon-possessed men. Then the entire town came out to meet Yeshua, and when they saw him, they begged him to leave their region. Now, there's so much going on here that we have already discussed in previous weeks that we need to tie together. For example, what about the significance of them again traveling to the region of Gentiles? And furthermore, when they get there, what's the first thing they encounter? Demon-possessed people. What do you make of that? Why would the land of the Gentiles... I think that we're being led to an understanding that these people... a demon is possessing someone, that makes them unclean. This is an unclean type of thing. This is an issue of being either tameh or tahor, clean or unclean. These people are ritually unclean and infested with demons. And you notice that there's also mention of pigs?
Yeah.
And when did we see a mention of pigs before?
The sun, what he goes.
The pearl.
The pearl. Do not throw your pearl before the swine, or they will turn and trample it. Do not give what is holy to dogs. And that was also in relation to the Gentile woman who was asking for healing. So I think that this is absolutely a perfect picture of Yeshua going to the land of the Gentiles. But what's interesting in this case is that he meets demon-infested people, and then they all come out to see him. They're not believing. They're saying, "Get out of here." They're saying, "Please leave." That is a very unusual thing that you don't see very often in the Gospels.
And also interesting that demons right away recognize the spiritual component, the divinity of Christ.
Yes, and what do you think they mean when they say, "Have you come here to torment us before the time?"
It wasn't their time.
What time?
The
The
divinity
final
split.
judgment.
How would they know about this?
Well, they're coming
They know the
to devil.
scripture.
They know the scripture, don't they?
From the beginning.
Yes, they do.
They know better than we do.
They know the scripture better than we do. The demon, just like James says, the demons believe and they shudder. Are these demons shuddering? I think they are. I think they absolutely recognize Yeshua because they can see into the spiritual realm, and they say, "Whoa, man, this isn't supposed to be happening for a little while. You just come to torment us before the appointed time." Do you know anywhere that this is talked about in the Tanakh, of this appointed time of demons being punished? Nobody?
Strange that they know the time.
It is interesting that they know the time, isn't it?
Right.
Yes? Oh, I thought you were saying something. I mean, I think the book of Revelation clearly has some indications about, demons being, thrown into a lake of fire and tormented.
Yeah.
I think you could tie that together. You also have demons in a pit that have already been confined to captivity.
Yeah.
Derek?
Yeah, well, just with that, I think what Peter and Jude talks about that with the angels being bound in Tartarus or something like that.
Mhm.
But obviously that's in the New Testament, and then we don't have that in the Old Testament. But
Yeah, there's not real clear indications there, is there?
yeah, but I guess I was going to say, as far as answering where in the Tanakh do we see it, we don't. But as far as the extra information out there that obviously Peter and these other disciples knew about of the information, it unfortunately we don't have it today. But
Right.
I guess there's probably information in there.
Yeah. And let me ask you, we haven't really discussed this, but we may have touched on it briefly, but I have a question for you. Why are there demons everywhere in the New Testament?
I read somewhere that at that time the Messiah was supposed to be coming, and it was only during the time that there's really so much infestation, not only among the Gentiles but even among the Jews. And they have not. I can't remember where I read it, but it seems like it was a phenomenon during Jesus' time.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's what is curious, because if you, how many of you are aware of demons infesting people in the Old Testament?
Except for Saul, it's
Saul
the Spirit of God.
It's yes. Now in Saul, in the book of 1 Samuel, where it talks about Saul, it says that God sent an evil spirit upon him to plague him.
And Paul too.
But why did God send an evil spirit upon him?
Sin.
Is it really
Sin and
Yeah.
rebellion. to plague him and trouble him. But he also sent a remedy, didn't he? What was the remedy?
David.
How did David help him? By playing music. There might be
Right.
something to look into there. I'm not exactly sure what to make of that, but that's an interesting insight. That's the only time that I'm aware of in the Torah and the writings and the prophets, where they're in the Old Testament, that someone has some kind of an evil influence.
Can it also be that during Yeshua's time, that of course he saw those spirits right away, those
Yeah.
evil spirits,
Sure.
as where maybe in the older time, a lot of people, except for of course Moses and Aaron, but I don't know if they even were able to really
Like have that
detect.
kind of spiritual discernment.
Right.
Yeah, no other prophet that I'm aware of has ever demonstrated that type of spiritual
No.
discernment, and not that I'm aware of.
But it was not only Jesus who were casting out demons, even those who were not.
He
with
gave
him
that
were.
authority
So
to his disciples
there
as
was
well.
freedom.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Now
but
still
there was
you get the
really
Holy
so
Spirit.
much infestation at that time.
Yeah, absolutely. That's an interesting question. I don't know exactly how to answer it, Derek.
I almost feel the same way, so I'm not going to ask anymore.
Well, I'll ask this.
Can I say?
You may, absolutely.
Well, it says somewhere in the New Testament it talks about the angels being interested in the mysteries, angels into which the angels long to look. I mean, if the holy angels are curious about this, then I'm betting all the demons are really curious
Yeah,
when he
that's
shows up
what
on
I would-
earth, and they are kind of, what is going on here? And I think that he attracted them in a way because they're wondering what is this? What is happening here?
Yeah.
Because
Well, I think they would feel the presence of that on the earth where they kind of just
Oh,
dwell.
definitely.
And now he's standing there, I don't know if you guys have ever seen how they get worms. They put an electric rod in the ground and they just come to the electric rod and they dig it in something.
Yeah. Well, that
It's
makes
like
sense to
he's
me.
like a rod that's
There's a
basically-
disturbance in the force.
Yeah, exactly.
that's
exactly.
what I was trying.
Now, I want to ask you this: what is a demon?
Fallen angel.
A follower of the devil. Ariman.
I don't think
Yes,
that's
but he's a fallen
Jerry?
angel.
I believe that it is the soul of the fallen giants back before the flood.
that what?
That's what
That's
it says
very
in the book of
interesting, Jerry.
Enoch. That's what a lot
I
of
agree
studies
with
say.
Jerry, but
She
I'm
agrees
not
with
positive.
Jerry.
I wouldn't.
Yeah, there's no scientific
No,
proof.
No, you're not gonna
Exactly.
you're not gonna prove that. But you know what? That's an interesting insight, and you know what? That's actually what the Jews believe.
So what
Jews do not believe that demons are fallen angels.
They're always looking for a body to inhabit.
They believe that they are actually the wandering spirits of people who, in fact, some of the teachings in the Zohar, this mystery religious stuff in Judaism, talks about a race of people who inhabited the planet before God did a restoration of the planet in Genesis 1:1.
Oh, yeah, we've heard that.
I'm not certain. I'm just telling you some of the. I'm just telling you some of the mysterious stuff out there. I know that some of you have probably heard of the gap theory, haven't you?
Yeah.
That when God created the earth in Genesis 1:1, that was not the beginning of everything.
There was
That the
some.
planet had already been destroyed by some great cataclysm, and this was actually a restoration. There's some very good evidence in the Bible that that is actually true. And so the Jewish rabbis have pontificated, and I'm not saying that this is true, but either the souls of the Nephilim, if you will, that are seeking to inhabit physical bodies, because we know they have a taste for human flesh, from the what happened in the time of Noah. But the Jews actually take that one step further and say these are disembodied spirits, that had something to do with before creation even, that were wandering the planet. But that they are not fallen angels. I have no idea. Just some curious trivia. Any question? Yeah, Jim.
If that's true, then what is it, 1/3 or 2/3 of the angels? Where are they? Are they bound right now?
That's an excellent question. Are they bound, or are they running around loose, causing havoc at the bidding of their master, the devil, who's sending them on chores to harass people in a
We
spiritual
know some of them
realm?
are bound.
We do know that some of them are bound. That is true.
But
That
they're
is true.
bound because they said, like I just read that. the
Because
other
of
day.
their taste for women and flesh.
Well,
But I think
also-
that's talking about the ones that were at the time of
John-
the Nephilim.
That they had
That's,
sex
that's the
with the women.
parents of the Nephilim.
The parents of the
Yeah, they
Nephilim.
said
Yeah,
they-
that could be.
Because they didn't stay within their boundaries.
Their abode, yes.
They went outside
Yeah,
of
right.
their, and so they're bound, and that's why I think that when he they would rather be cast into those pigs than down into the pit, because when you're down in that pit, you don't get out.
At least they're bacon.
So.
Derek,
That's right, okay.
Derek, sorry. Go ahead, Derek.
I heard a very good question. I heard a very plausible explanation as far as, because I think when it talks about the 1/3 of angels, that's only in Revelation, right?
That is true. Yes.
And so, taking that, I heard an explanation that, that's still a future thing, and that, as far as everything else that we deal with in our day, that now, or whatever scriptures that you see in terms of other references, just because there's just different classes of angels going on, and that's a particular class of angels that will get kicked out of heaven later. That's still yet to be.
Yeah, and that certainly could be true. And these ideas about the spiritual realm and demons and fallen angels, it's really is pure speculation. We can't really know, but it's certainly interesting. And I didn't want to spend too much time on it. I just wanted to kind of throw it out there to have you kick it around the floor a little bit. Now,
So let me ask you this then, what is a demon-possessed man? Is that one demon in each one, or is a demon basically a puppeteer?
well, there was one
Legion of
instance
man.
where there was a guy that was possessed by multiple demons. But you know what? That's an excellent question, and it makes me think of something that I wanted to bring up to you. Now, I know that many of you may have heard about charismatic type of stuff where they cast out demons willy-nilly, right? Catholics do it, Jews do it, charismatic Christians do it, right?
Yeah.
Now, in my day, it's still my day, but growing up, when I was younger, I went to a charismatic assembly
You're still
where it
young
was
now.
like, you know what, Tim, if you're looking at lust with a woman, you have a spirit of lust. There's an evil demon inside you that is causing you to lust after women. If I smoke cigarettes, I have a demon of smoking. If I
You have a smoking demon.
I have a smoking demon. If I have whatever sin you're dealing with in your life, there's a specific demon that is plaguing you that is causing you to sin. that was the way that it was looked at. And they were willing,
Yeah.
ready and willing and able
So
to
you
cast
have more.
demons out of everybody willy-nilly because you had some. I will never forget the day
No,
in church
You gotta say.
where this guy, they were asking for people to give testimony about being
is
delivered
being
from
recorded.
demons.
That's all right.
And I'll cut it out. This guy stood up in a congregation, a sizable one, and said, "I am praising the Lord that I have been freed from masturbation." And I thought, oh my goodness, he
Oh,
did
well,
not
he was
just
on
say that.
He was on
I
it.
thought, wow.
He amputated his
And,
hands.
and you know what? No, maybe there was a demon of masturbation. Apparently, I don't know. I just thought that was really weird, especially since he was like an older teenager, and I thought, man, you just don't do that in public.
Well,
But
yeah, you don't.
nevertheless,
He didn't have any.
You don't talk about it either way.
I digress.
He didn't
But
have
my
any
question relates to this. In the Bible, when you have a demon-possessed person, what is the evidence of a demon-possessed person? Is it because someone's sinning?
No.
How do you know a person is demon-possessed? What is being manifested? What do you see? What's the common thread?
craziness. Eyes.
Huh?
Violent?
They can be violent,
Oh,
naked,
Strong.
Charles
Strong.
Manson?
naked, paralyzed,
Uh,
mute,
yeah.
deaf,
dumb.
Throw
dumb.
themselves
That
in the
doesn't
fire.
include me.
Yeah. So what we're talking about here is, does that bear any resemblance to what you know of as demon possession in our day?
No.
Bears no resemblance at all. The demon-possessed people in the Bible had strong evidence, either physically or mostly physically.
Yeah.
There was mostly physical affliction.
Like he stripped him off. The guys came
So-
from it. That guy was gonna cast
Yeah,
out
the guy
that
who
demon.
was stripped up, beat those three Jewish
Yeah, he
sons
said,
of that one
"Jesus,
guy who were trying to cast out
Jesus I
demons.
know, and
Yeah.
this I know, but you I don't know, so I
That's
beat
right.
him up and stripped him off and threw him out naked. 'Cause
That's right. So, but I'm just saying, most of the instances that you have of people being demon possessed in the Bible have very strong indications of spiritual
Oh,
and
strong.
physical affliction.
Oh yeah.
And so it's certainly not what we're looking at today. It's like, maybe you're depressed or something. You got a demon, that's oppressing you, or you're experiencing.
Pray that we don't
some-
have dreams tonight.
No, seriously, but I think that, in our day and age, I think really that pop psychology and psychiatry kind of got involved with Christianity somehow, and the psyche of a person, and really what I would consider to be the sin nature that is within you is now treated as a demon.
I know, and it's not.
And that's your what the Greek would call your ego.
Yeah.
That's what the Greeks call the ego. What is
Ego
inside of
inside.
you? That is your nefesh, your flesh.
It's sinful, man.
That's your what do the Jews call that? Your evil inclination. That's
Your
what
evil eye.
That's what they call it. So I don't know that we have a real clear understanding of this. And I have seen people who have been maybe crippled or blind or deaf or mute, and I thought, now that could possibly be a demon manifestation, because that's what it looks like in the Bible.
You know what looks like a demon to me? Have you seen those videos of people on like that crocodile drug from Russia?
Yeah.
Where
That
they're like,
could be.
their limbs turn the wrong
Mouth
way, they
salts.
start
Oh,
crab
oh,
walking
yeah.
across.
Yeah,
I mean,
they're-
it looks
they're-
like something out of
yeah.
The Exorcist.
Yeah,
It's
that's-
really
Well, you know what?
weird.
It certainly could be that, doing drugs like that. I mean, that's how these pagans worship their gods a lot of times,
They
through
do
drugs
drugs.
and alcohol. I think
Yep.
that opens you up to a spiritual type of thing.
It does.
So, people walking like crabs on some kind of wackadoo drugs,
Well, that's-
you know what? They could be demon possessed, because that type of behavior looks like demon possession to me from the
Yeah.
Bible point of
Well,
view.
They have, I saw something was about the strange fire thing from, I don't remember, was it John
John
MacArthur?
MacArthur.
Oh,
Yeah,
John
and they were
MacArthur's
showing
Strange
some
Fire,
of those
yeah.
people, and let me
That's
tell
not
you,
God. They were saying they were getting the Holy Spirit.
yeah, they
But
were
it
saying,
wasn't.
and that, they were literally calling upon, there is a spirit that, what was the name of that spirit? It's a spirit, because when I showed
Cabal or
show-
something?
John the video, he goes, oh, that's,
Absinthe?
some spirit, and it makes, and they literally called that spirit in their body, not knowing they were thinking they were calling upon the Holy Spirit, but their whole, and they started shaking and tweaking and.
That's not
That's where we
Kutalese or
Barking
something
like
like that.
dogs and hissing
Yeah,
like
oh,
snakes.
it's
You
horrible.
know, that's some trippy stuff, man.
Yeah.
That is some trippy stuff,
Yeah.
and I think for whatever reason, people who wanted a little spiritual excitement got themselves wrapped up into that.
Yeah.
And you know what? Frankly, you guys, I don't know how many of you have any kind of familiarity with the, you know, the that movement, the Azusa Street movement that started in California. You know, the kind of the charismatic movement.
Yeah.
I can't think of a single person, and I knew many who were in that movement, that it did not almost completely destroy their faith. They've certainly changed, and they are no longer the same people.
Because they saw demons on every doorknob.
Demons on the doorknob. That
Yeah,
is,
I mean,
that is
where
a
you
good
see
way to
them.
look at it.
Well, that's the way they used
We're
to.
talking about demons, though, how they look and how they. It seems to me a demon can take the form of a very normal person.
They
Well,
can't.
Be
that's certainly
So-
possible.
so. What would be the reasoning to be crocodiles? That's
So they
horrendous
can eat
stuff.
you up?
I mean,
Yeah, that's crazy.
troubling. And I mean, what would be the reasoning of him being that type of demon, or one that's,
Just
I guess, to terrify people at one
To
stage or
deceive?
distraction?
Yeah, DC.
I mean, what about these guys that are casting these demons out? Perhaps they're the ones that are causing these weird things to happen, and then they come in as a savior to do it, but the demon is actually working in both hands. You know, what they're doing.
I think, and you know, and I have seen this firsthand. That I think that you know, when these charismatic type people would get together, and you know, it's like we're going to pray for you, and we're all going to lay our hands on you, and we're going to speak in tongues, and we're going to cast the demons out. That suddenly the person becomes very agitated, and that's just evidence of a demon. Well, I think that what this is evidence of is deep. You're tapping deep into a person's psyche, and they are
Exactly.
fighting from somewhere deep inside of them. I wouldn't consider that to be demonic influence. I would consider that to be you're just tapping into the essence of that person, the fleshly, physical nature of that person, which is going to naturally rebel against spiritual things, and that rebellion is strong. And that you're tapping into the deep parts of someone's psyche who is rejecting spiritual things, and they'll fight you on it.
And there's also a type when people do stuff like that. There's like the person that's doing it don't realize in some ways they're hypnotizing them, and then it causes them to manifest
Absolutely.
what it might sound crazy. It just literally causes them to manifest
Yeah.
a demon when it's whatever I said, hypnotizing them. And you're thinking that it is, and you're the one that's causing it, because I've had that experience.
Yeah,
I met a guy one time at somewhere, and he worked in that. He claimed to cast out demons, but literally the Lord showed me he was literally hypnotizing people to perform like they had demons and coming out of them.
Oh,
It
goodness.
sounds weird, like so that he would look
It is
good.
weird. It doesn't just sound weird.
Yeah.
It is weird. Grace?
There's a lot. I mean, you know, what we're talking about here is like anywhere from over here to over
I've had
here.
lots of experience in that
But
area.
if you've been in a home, Mom and Dad rented a home when I was really little, and I barely remember it, but I do remember it. I might have been 4 or 5 years old, maybe. And they rented a home that they found out afterwards had been rented to some people who did seances and stuff. And things happened in that home that Mom and Dad at first could not believe it. They thought they were just imagining it. And at that point, they didn't even know that this had gone on in that home. But there were, and I am living proof of lived through it, there were demonic things going on in that home. But our family, Mom and Daddy especially, was almost a brand new Christian at the time. And the Lord protected us. And Dad got us out of that home as soon as he could. But in the meantime, they even got to the point where in the kitchen, Mom and Dad together put a specific dish in a certain specific place because they kept thinking it was getting moved, and they thought this can't happen. Well, then they started really just, I think the Lord told them, you know, in their hearts, check it out. And it moved in the night. Something came and moved, and not just 5 inches or something, moved from this cupboard to this cupboard. Literally. And none of us kids could have reached it. We would have had no, you know what I mean?
That was in Matterville, where they were living at that time.
Omniville, you mean?
You know, but
Amityville?
I believe
Amityville.
firmly,
Sounds like poltergeist.
based on other things too in my upbringing, in my home, in my experiences, that we as believers, we can be bothered and oppressed, but we cannot be possessed. The Holy Spirit is indwelling.
I've always thought that.
But you can definitely be bothered and oppressed. And you can cry out to the Lord, and I don't know about the exorcism stuff. I really don't. I think that the devil can get our eyes so focused on all these things that we forget this wonderful stuff like Angela was showing us.
Amen, yeah.
That I've never seen and never stopped and thought of it like that. And that blesses my soul.
Yeah.
And that's what it's all about.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, this demon stuff is really can be a sidetracking issue for sure. And I know that there are spiritual forces at work in the world. There's no question about it. I mean, you know,
We
Peter
wrestle not against
tells
flesh
us
and
that.
blood.
Yeah, Peter tells us that we are not wrestling against flesh and blood. But I think that becoming somehow enamored of it or wanting to get involved in it, or hey, this is really exciting, I think I need to fight some demons, you know, you become a demon slayer or something.
Yeah.
You're asking for trouble, man.
Yeah.
And I think it's best to just, you know, purify yourself and stay pure in the Word of God, and really, that's your best defense against getting involved
Keep
in
our
it.
eyes on
Camellia?
Christ.
Know His
Let
word.
somebody who is called for that ministry, because I believe there are people that really are called to that ministry to go but
Yeah, those
I'm not called
Catholic
to do
priests
that.
can go do that all day long,
Yeah.
or I care.
I'm not called to do that.
What's that, Angela?
And from looking at the Drudge Report, I see they're quite busy lately.
Yeah,
They keep having these little things.
that's true. If you read the
Possessions are
Drudge
on the
Report,
rise.
it
I'm
seems
does that
like
mean Jesus is getting closer?
the Catholics are casting demons out everywhere. Well, that is funny. And you know what? This is the beginning of chapter 9, and there's a lot of another section with a boat, and we got some more really powerful stuff going on
and
here.
look prepared if you read this on your own.
And yes, I'm definitely going to recommend that you. This is where you guys, it gets very heavy. We're about to get into the parables. This is where the stuff, it gets serious, and there's some really deep stuff, and I need you to, this week, read Matthew chapter 9, because this is where some of those deep parables start coming in. This is going to be some really powerful stuff, and I think we're going to find some amazing nuggets in these parables that we had not seen before. But I don't want to get started on it tonight because it's already just about 9 o'clock here. And I'm going to wrap it up, and we'll pick up in Matthew chapter 9 next week and start getting into some of this and getting into the parables. But read that. Read chapter 9 and be prepared, because the poop's about to hit the fan, you guys. It's going to be great. Are you ready? Let's pray.